Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time we're talking episode 3 of season 4 of Legend of Korra called The Coronation. And this episode is significant simply because kind of what we've seen coming the last two episodes takes shape. And that's so the whole Kuvira basically telling Prince Wu to F off. She's running the show in the Earth Kingdom now. And what's really interesting here is that both Kuvira supporters and Prince Wu's supporters, who technically, I guess, basically consist of Mako, are both correct. On the one hand, Prince Wu is obviously horribly unfit to run. I mean, this guy couldn't even run a newspaper stand. I mean, he even blatantly, flat out says that when he takes the throne, he's going to leave all the real work of running the country to his ministers, and is basically just planning to continue living his luxurious lifestyle, just goofing around, shopping for clothes, and really only giving a damn about himself. Now, Kuvira, on the other hand, it's said that she's even been throwing people who probably see the writing on the wall here and have been objecting to what she's been doing into internment camps. And we've already seen her strong-arming people into joining her who don't want to join her. So it's a question of, well, we've got two people we've got basically a choice between someone who's incompetent and someone who's perfectly willing to set themselves up as a dictator. There is no good choice here. If you've followed my reviews for a while, you might have heard me mention the French philosopher Sartre. And Sartre's main thing that I really like is that he says, you always have a choice. You just aren't always going to have a choice you like. And the choices here right now for the Earth Kingdom are somebody who's incompetent, somebody who's a dictator, or just falling back into anarchy. It doesn't really seem to be a good choice for somebody to take charge there. Now, I do like that they take the time this episode to really kind of flesh out Prince Wu. We see him, somebody who kind of goes from what he thinks should be the best day of his life and having it turn into the worst day of his life. And you see him just like in denial. You see him cry, angry about things. You see him, having basically reduced to tears about the whole situation. I mean, it's very reminiscent of the 5 stages of grief. Albeit those are, in modern psychological terms, considered very questionable, but it is definitely along those lines. And at the end of it all, when he sort of breaks down at the photo booth thing, complete with a apparently stuffed version of Bosco, he kind of realizes that, yeah, I'm really not cut out to be king, and even kind of more or less thanks Mako for sort of giving him some straight talk. So it sort of looks like Prince Wu is in a lot of ways like the Earth King. The Earth King wasn't a bad guy. He was just someone who had deliberately been kept in the dark about how things really were by the Dai Li. And Prince Wu, it doesn't really seem like a bad person. He's just sort of a spoiled jerk. But it seems like Mako has gotten through to him. And I think therein kind of lies some hope for Prince Wu as a character. Mako really would be an excellent sort of person to sort of give him to school the prince on the hard realities of life. He's somebody who spent his life living on the streets. He was even a petty criminal for a while. Then he's been an athlete. He's been, a close ally of the Avatar, and now he's a respected police officer. Oh yeah, and he was even a wanted fugitive for a while. So, Prince Wu could certainly do worse than Mako as a mentor on how to be a better person. And he already seems to consider Mako to be his friend and is willing to listen to what he has to say. So I think there is some real potential for Prince Wu as a character. We might finally see the kingdoms of the world of Avatar moving towards the idea of the constitutional monarchy. And keep in mind, the current political situation is basically there is a decent-sized republic, and everything else is ruled by either essentially at this point a dictator, a military dictator who has seized power, and the Fire Lord, again a monarchy, well, Fire Lady, I guess I suppose it is. And then you have the northern and southern water tribes, which are basically ruled by chiefs who sort of also, which for them is basically their word for king. So it's basically, Republic City is really the only non-monarchy out there. So if they were to move in the Earth Kingdom towards something like what they have in, for example, the UK with a constitutional monarchy, and they also have that in places like Denmark and other parts of Scandinavia, which do have royal families that you just don't really hear very much about, at least here in the U.S., then yeah, that seems like a workable option. Now, granted, in those countries, the monarchs are really just sort of figureheads, so it might be something more along the lines of a limited monarchy. Where the ruler, the monarch does have some legitimate political power, but there's also a parliament who has power too. So, that's something to think about. Now, looking at Kuvira as a character, first of all, I love that she's just petty enough to basically steal Prince Wu's hotel room out from under him. And she's also, as we see, a very manipulative person. Like when Bolin starts expressing his doubts, she immediately plays on his respect for her and the fact that he's kind of one of her inner circle, and is like, look, Bolin, you know me. We're on the same side here. We're comrades and allies. You know that I'm not a bad person. This is just me doing what I gotta do. And Bolin buys this. And then Kuvira immediately goes around and starts threatening her future mother-in-law, saying like, yeah, if you don't get with the program, then, well, I'm going to bring my army to Zaofu and show you what's what. And it's a real bitter pill for Sue to swallow, because this is basically someone who's going to be her future daughter-in-law. And Kuvira, being a former member of the forces in Zaofu, probably picked up a lot of this anti-monarch rhetoric from Sue herself, and has just taken and pursued it to an extreme. So, yeah. Let me see. And of course, we also got to see that really nice argument between Mako and Bolin. And again, I'm really glad that they didn't have it turning into some kind of a physical fight. It's a side where both of these guys are making good points, and neither one is entirely wrong. Bolin is mostly focusing on what's good about Kuvira, and Mako focuses on the negative. And even Mako can't muster up that much of a defense for Prince Wu. So again, this is another example of Avatar really doing a great job of showing, yeah, both sides in these conflicts do have genuine and legitimate points. But ultimately, Kuvira is doing what she's doing for selfish reasons. She wants power. That's what it is at the end of the day. And it's been proven time and time again through history that people who want power are usually the ones who should least be given it. And of course, Varric is once again up to some creepy shenanigans. I'm sure that whatever he's doing in that research on the spirit vines and all that is going to come into fruition later on. Also, speaking of petty, I love how Varric is totally just like, yeah, go out and steal as much of those little soaps as you can. And I also like how they did take the time to mention he was given a pardon thanks to Kuvira's strong arming of the officials in Republic City. And again, they also sort of mentioned that Republic City and the other nations of the world are desperate for metal from the Earth Kingdom. And that being the case, they're going to kind of they'll probably go along with Kuvira even if they don't like it. You can kind of think of it as how Middle Eastern countries sometimes will threaten to cut off the oil supply in order to score political points. If you're familiar with what happened back in the 1970s with the gas crisis, when that's basically what happened. The Middle Eastern countries said, like, yeah, screw you, we're not giving you our oil, and things went pretty nutso for quite a while there. So you see how Kuvira does have herself set up in a very, very strong position. And Nothing really to say about Tenzin sending his kids out on the hunt for Korra. Only that it certainly would be pretty interesting to see those three run into Toph at some point, just to kind of see how she would react to them. I have a feeling that Toph and Milu in the same room together, that would be pretty spectacular. And of course, speaking of Toph, this is where we finally get to see her really as a fleshed out character as an older person. And it turns out that Toph really, really has not changed a bit. In fact, now that she's not a police officer anymore, she basically seems to have reverted to who she was fully when she was a kid. And I love how she's just like, oh man, I haven't had this much fun beating up the Avatar in years. And I mean, there's really nothing else that you could say about it. Toph has not changed a bit. And yeah, she really is the perfect person to go out there and give Korra the kick in the butt that she needs. And it is very interesting that she diagnoses the problem, one, as the poison, the metal that's still in Korra's bloodstream and whatnot, her body. And then she kind of goes on to say, like, yeah, Lin and Sue really aren't that great at metal bending. And of course, we've seen that Lin and Sue are absolutely fantastic metal benders. It's just that Toph is basically in a league of her own. She literally did invent metal bending. So, and this, of course, also kind of provides you a little bit of insight into Lin and Sue's character, where even their very best, which is got to be among the very best in the world, isn't good enough for Toph. So you can kind of see how they have some issues with their mom right there. But anyway, Toph does make the good points, like, you know what, you might be keeping that metal in your body simply because you can use that as an excuse to run away from your responsibilities as the Avatar. Well, we've seen with both Korra and Aang that being the Avatar generally means just one horrible thing after another is constantly happening to you. There's always some problem or crisis somewhere that you have to deal with, and it's often going to come back and hit you in a very personal way, not to mention all those people who are constantly going to be trying to kill you. So I think it's just a case of, Korra is still dealing with that whole PTSD and doesn't want to admit to herself that part of her doesn't want to go back to being the Avatar. And I really like how Toph just says, like, you know what, if this is all you're doing, then it's up to you to solve this. And it's basically Toph saying in her own way, I can't solve your problems for you. If it was just like purely a medical thing, if it was just Lin and like Sue kind of just wasn't quite up to getting all the metal out of Korra's body, then all Korra would have to do is relax. Toph would have taken care of the problem, and Korra would be back in action. But like Toph said, there's a part of Korra that doesn't want to be the Avatar anymore. A part of it that just wants to continue to run away from her problems. And we've seen with previous Avatars, with Aang in Season 3, that, running away from your problems is about the worst thing you can do in life in general, but especially if you're the Avatar. We're just going to ignore that. But anyway, that's really annoying. Anyway, guys, that's kind of all I have for you this week. So as always, please take care and have a